Welcome to the fifth facade, when architecture transmogrifies. Transmography is a new word to my vocabulary, but the notion of changing an appearance and a form for an architect is an unusual, but it's the strange and grotesque part that compelled me. The project I'm going to describe to you in the series in the sequence is actually a trajectory of an idea that has been spreading out and taking different forms, and some of them grotesque, over the past couple of years. The project is called Welcome to the Fifth Facade. I want to acknowledge the incredibly talented team at Olson Kundig that worked on this project. And as has been discussed throughout the day, the role that teams play in creativity can be so significant. This project changed as a consequence of skills that they brought to the table or their creative spirit and ideas that changed this trajectory as it moved along. This is a map. It's my least interesting slide. We are here, TEDxSausalito. In planning for this talk and thinking about this project, I actually drew a map. What happened last week, what happened 6 months ago, what happened 2 years ago. And it told me several things just by looking at it graphically, that there was a spine that actually held this work together. It began at the top left with some real built architectural projects, and then it moved on to research, and then it moved on to other pathways along the way. I was interested with some of the comments earlier about this very similar idea. I'm not an academic, I'm a practitioner, but intuitively, motivation about creative ideas for us tends to come two ways. And for architects, proportionally, most of our motivation is externally provoked. Someone will call you up and say, I need a new museum, or will you design a new bathroom, or will you design a park on the roof of a building? And we're designed on a kind of chromosomal level to jump in on that and come back creatively with responses. But there are many other creative disciplines, as we've been hearing all day long, that are actually, they're motivated by internal provocations. Someone wakes up in the morning with an idea, a piece of music they need to write or a piece they need to make, and they set out to create that work on their own. This is a project that danced back and forth between two forms of motivation. And it's all about the idea of rooftops in cities and what their future might be. But it began on terra firma. It actually began with a children's museum that I designed in Los Angeles probably 15 or more than 15 years ago. It's called Noah's Ark. And we got to work with an incredible team of puppeteers and artists and fabricators and the Skirball staff. And it was we'd never done one before. It was a really fun project, and it's still opening, still selling out apparently. But a woman from Korea who owns a fashion business came and visited it. And then she contacted us and completely non sequitur, can you design a park on the top of one of my buildings in South Korea? Working on a project like this is a one of a kind. It's an incredible opportunity. You're figuring out how to get 45-foot trees on top of a building. And so it was kind of a dream. And it was called Secret Garden. And it was a place for children and families, a public park on top of this building. And we wanted to make a place where it was a mysterious landscape of abstract forms where kids could actually discover different places throughout. And we trusted children's imaginations to fill in the blanks and use their own imaginations to enhance their play. The project turned out well, and she asked to do another one. And recently, she asked us to do a third one. This is a master plan for a project, but she added another twist. She said, make this one about a story. Can you think of a story? And we wanted a story that worked on the West and the East. And so we chose an ancient story, an Aesop's fable, and it's all about mice. And in this project, it's a modern retelling of this old story. It begins in a modern apartment, but the children and visitors are the size of mice, and everything is 20 times bigger. You can go swimming in the dirty dishes, walk across the fried eggs, move through the cabinets, the refrigerator, and then wander outside into a garden that's 20 times larger than you are. When you do project for a third time, there's the possibility that you might be asked to do it a fourth time, or a fifth if you're lucky. And in this instance, we realized there were many more things that could happen on the rooftops of buildings, and that we actually needed to do our homework. So at this point, we began a research project. We didn't have to look far. This is the view out of our studio in Seattle. You can see the challenge. There is a vast landscape across every city in the world of unused area. If most buildings have 4 facades, the landscape that waits for all of us, we called the 5th. We began by looking at all sorts of projects. We looked at conceptual ones, like this proposal in Beirut. We looked historically at the ways that when cities grew, people started to use rooftops like they used to use sidewalks and streets. It was always about observation. We were intrigued with the potential for urban agriculture, which will be so important to the world in the years to come, is important now. But we also thought that as cities grew taller, so did the shadows that the buildings cast, and we liked the idea of bringing children out of the darkness and back into the daylight again. We looked at aspects of exclusivity and class. We looked at art history, and we studied a philosopher named who, I'm blocking on his name, but the pretext of his work was that when you get to the highest place, from that moment you can see for miles, and you can't necessarily be seen yourself. There's an odd sense of privacy at the top of the world. We looked at really wild projects. We looked at really sensible projects. This is one in Seattle. There's a pea patch. We studied the science and the technology behind the potential for rooftops. It could be a 3-day workshop just telling you about these things, but the potential is off the charts. But at the end of the day, we wanted to find projects, and there weren't many of them, but there were some that did 3 things. They connected technology, sustainability, and experience, human experience. So we started to imagine, take all this information that we had gotten, synthesize it into an idea. We stretched a huge piece of canvas in the studio, and we started to use drawing as a way to synthesize, and we did a drawing of our neighborhood. And you can see the little sketches on the side as we begin to think through what the parts and pieces might be. This is Jerome, my colleague who worked with me on the project, and slowly we're adding and synthesizing many, many ideas about rooftops into one proposal and using our neighborhood as the model to build it on. But architects, probably because we're toughened in architecture school, we love criticism. It's some reason it's like water off our backs, and it makes the ideas better. We invited people come in to criticize it, to throw darts at the idea. And we invited farmers and botanists and landscape architects and historians. And each one had a different take on what could happen and how it might end up. The finished drawing was actually one that we played with making it a public area that was interconnected. The rooftops were public. There's a lot of spaces that are about energy harvesting and food harvesting, playgrounds for children, public spaces. But the style of the drawing is intentionally murky. Architects tend to skew towards the utopic. It's to our benefit that we're optimistic that we will get things done. But many of the people that we spoke to were pessimistic. This idea could skew very badly. And it was those conversations, and that's why the style of the drawing tried to maintain an even keel. When the drawing was done, we didn't know what to do with it. And so my colleague, Jerome, I asked him to look for maybe competitions we could enter. And he found the most unusual one. It's called Fairy Tales, When Architecture Tells a Story. And it's about the relationship between architecture and narrative. We decided we would take this mural that we had created, this world we had created, and actually enter it into a submittal. It's the largest ideas competition in the world. We didn't have a chance of winning, but there was something else about genre surfing and architects trying another form that was compelling to us, so we jumped in. The competition has 2 requirements. You have to write a 1,500-word story. Most architects are not writers, which I did in a weekend. And then, working with a team, we created 5 images, because you had to submit 5 illustrations for your story. This is a story that starts with a man who has a heart attack in the middle of a play in Arizona. He's taken to the hospital and he dies, and he is cryogenically preserved. His head is severed and frozen, and he returns decades later, and he returns to the landscape that we had designed in the 5th facade. This is where that word transmography comes in, the grotesque. Architects are usually not arguing about how long to make the neck bone protrude from the severed head. But there was this darkness to this story as well. And and you can see the way that we're weaving in the previous project to create yet another form. But what's significant about it is that it moved from nonfiction, the world of architecture, to the world of fiction. And it was a chance for us to look at the dystopic potential as well as the utopic one. And it taught us and showed us many things. I was so certain that 1,500 people enter this competition, you can't win. And I loved the trajectory of where we were going that I decided, let's move this to another genre. Let's take the mural, let's take these renderings, and now some of you, let's learn how to make films and how to edit films, and let's make a 5-minute film. We'll post it up on our website on the day that we lose the competition, and it will be fun, and we'll tell the story. This is an 18-second clip that was actually on our Instagram feed. And it shows the ways that the previous work, the mural, the illustrations, were actually woven with live footage to actually make a new way of telling a story and examining an architecture project. Sometimes, when you enter a competition like the Fairy Tales competition, it really is happily ever after. To our astonishment, our genuine astonishment, we won. It became a way of understanding that new audiences and new ways of experimenting were not only teaching us things about projects, but mostly it was about how to look at work and future work in ways that just doesn't happen in an architecture firm. We were rolling the dice. We were on a roll. We submitted it to 3 film festivals. 2 of them open tomorrow, and it's been part of the official selection. Again, this is not territory where architects tend to land. The final version of this, again, you're onto me now, taking all the collateral of the previous things, the mural, the competition, the film. Now we turned it into what its latest incarnation. For me, a comic book, but for the youngsters on my team, it's a graphic novel. But it is a piece, and it's here. In fact, I've got probably about 100 of them over there, and I'll bring them out to the party afterwards. I want to ask you to participate in this project, if you wouldn't mind. If some of you would like to see this or have one, please take it. But we want it to go to places and unusual audiences. And so if you're going backpacking in Iceland, or you know someone you think might like it, send it there, take it there, leave it anywhere you like. But take a photograph, and if you would use social networks, by either Welcome to the Fifth Façade or @Olson Kundig, we'd love to see where you landed. And we have many other people who are doing this for us as well. The mural is hanging in our studio. And recently, a client that's building a technology campus came by, and they sat down and they were really taken with it. And they were going to do multiple buildings, and they said, well, could you actually do this? Could it happen on a real project? I think that's all I mean by this talk, that creativity is a free fall. You cannot predict the path where the work is going to go. But the fact that this might cycle back to another external provocation gets me waking up every morning and jumping out of bed. Thank you very much.